G'day folks, welcome to the Snowies Camping Show. Yet another episode with myself, Ben, and my colleague Lauren. How are you today?
I'm good.
You're good. That's good. Hey, please subscribe to our channel via the YouTube or on YouTube, where you can watch us and listen, or you can listen in and subscribe via your favorite podcast app, or join in on the conversation at the Snowies Facebook group. If you haven't joined, ask us and we'll let you in, and you can ask any questions you want, camping related, or join in on conversation that's already happening. Or I might even post a question about something we just talked about, that you don't like Smarties. Particularly, this is totally off topic, but I can't believe you don't like the shell around the Smartie or the Jaffa.
No.
Anyway,
I don't.
We'll put a poll out there.
I don't like the crunchy candy thing around the chocolate. It's just not okay.
Does anyone else have a mini hammer to chip the candy shell off of their Jaffa before eating it? Anyway, that's not what we're talking about today. Well, it's what we did talk about, but we're over now. But what we're actually talking about.
That was actually a private conversation.
Was it? Well, we can stop recording now if you like, but
anyway, I'm not weird, I promise.
It's too vindicated. But what we are actually talking about today is how to find a campsite.
Yeah.
Which is not, it used to be easy, right? You didn't have to book online. There wasn't as many people camping. So for the most part, you could drive somewhere, find an empty campsite. This is how I remember as a kid anyway. Set up, pay your fees via the little envelope at the little post at the entrance, and stay as long as you want. But,
and I want to throw in there as well that I think not only with all the craziness of the last couple of years have we seen a massive rise in people interested in camping and people going camping, which obviously makes spots that we have been used to going to for a long time be often full, is that there's also been this shift towards not wanting to handle cash or money wherever possible. So there's been this shift towards online booking systems and campsites that all of this palaver, because I'm just sick of talking about the word, all of this palaver, you could just rock up to on a Friday, or potentially if you sort of knew it was going to be a busy weekend because it was a longer weekend or whatever, you could possibly go to on a Thursday and walk into at least a campsite because there would be a handful still free.
Yep.
To now going online to try and book and not being able to book from up to 2 months in advance because people now have the option to do that. So those campsites are no longer viable for us because those options have been going, okay, might pop away for the weekend, let's go up and see. You can't do that anymore.
It's 3 to 6 months, I would say, to book, and there's a lot of cases where people will book each year. So they book now and then book the same spot 12 months out. So those sites are now just off the cards altogether.
Yeah.
It's not a first in best dressed scenario because they booked it. So and then you have the issue of campsites that sit empty because people book it but don't turn up. You can cancel it, but it doesn't necessarily suddenly mean that someone, if you cancel on the last night, it doesn't suddenly get filled up unless someone turns up. So overall it's becoming.
Which we're not trying to have a whinge, but no. I just personally feel like the face of camping in terms of where you can go and what's accessible has changed a lot.
It does, yeah. And it requires much more planning.
Yeah.
And I hate trip planning. I really just want to get in the car and drive and stop wherever I stop and camp wherever I find a camp. But
me too.
Can't do that anymore. You've got to plan ahead to a degree for the most part. Some remote locations, not so bad. If you're not there in the busy season as well, makes a lot of difference. I know when we travelled up through WA, we did it in the hot season when no one else is there. Didn't have to plan for 90% of the trip. Above Perth, didn't have to plan for any of that. Caravan parks, campsites, a lot of them were empty. So I would go back there in the hot season at the drop of a hat. So if you do want to travel like that, go in the off season. Not that doesn't apply to everywhere, but for hot, humid environments or particularly maybe cold environments that aren't snow-based, probably if you go in the off season, you can camp that way. If you're going in the busy season, you've got to plan ahead.
Yep.
So that means jumping online, parks, websites, looking at what's available, planning your itinerary, and being somewhat flexible because it means when you book here a certain spot one night and then you're hoping to do maybe 200 Ks of driving the next day. But if you can't find a campsite there, that 200 Ks has got to either be plus or minus
Yeah.
whatever the gap is to the next
At the
available
very
space.
least, have a backup plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the first thing, and I think also, I'm pretty sure I haven't already mentioned this because my brain is just in this loop of, did I already say this podcast?
you
But
could be vague.
we
today.
get a lot of questions. Thank you. What a lovely compliment. We get a lot of questions around where can I go to camp? You know, where's some good places to go?
Yeah.
Give us a hot tip and whatever. So I think a lot of people would probably agree that sharing your campsites is not, I mean, I don't think that we're Scrooges or misers. I think if you find a really good campsite that you love going to, for the most part, you don't put it out there.
Yeah.
You know, you might share it with some close friends or family or things like that, but you certainly don't just advertise it.
Yeah.
Let me know, by the way, if you guys feel the same about that or if that's just a particular thing.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. You hold
Ben
it to
and I.
yourself. It's not that it's not. You can find these places, but you know it's available. You can find it through here. You can book it through here. But
it's not like it's a
almost
secret, but
always quiet, and I can always get a spot. If you suddenly go and say to people, "This is an awesome campsite here," suddenly it's not quiet and it's always booked.
So yes. So in answer to that question of where can we go camping, basically we're just going to run through a couple of different options that we use or rely on to try and suss out where we can go camping and how to find these places for yourself. So obviously first things first is word of mouth. This word of mouth, as we've sort of just touched on, it's more likely to come from friends or family that do camp regularly and are happy to share their great spots. So bear in mind that if someone does give you a hot tip on a spot they like to go, that you really sort of treasure that spot and look after it and make sure that you're doing your bit to sort of leave no trace and
which goes to every campsite.
Keep that spot cool.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. Books. It's old school books these days.
Yep.
But the Camps Australia book, it's called Camps. I think the latest one is 11 maybe.
11 is 11? It? Wow. Yeah, it's always updated. It's a really
it's
good
updated
book.
almost it's updated every year, I reckon. But it's a great book. It's so popular. People love it. It's got maps and camps and pictures and all sorts of little icons to help you work it out.
So their books are beneficial. It's all online, right? But if you're trying to get away from the screen, don't always have reception either. The book's just something you can sit there and flick through quite easily while you're sitting in the campsite.
And sometimes I find
the car, sorry.
Yeah, sometimes I find if you're trying to plan campsites and stuff and you might have, a tab open on your phone and then open up another tab and whatever, sometimes books are just really easy as a cross-reference of being able to flip back and forth between things. But Make Tracks also do a good one which is updated really frequently and it's free camping one.
Yep. And
I think they also cover fishing potentially in that as well.
Okay. And HEMA have got tons of guides as well.
HEMA have tons of guides, like local guides and things for particular regions and stuff. And they obviously do lots of maps. But
so these are all updated. But
sort of the main ones.
If you buy the current one now, it's not out of date by tomorrow. When they're updated, it's just new sites are added to the book. So
and potentially ones that maybe are closed or removed, but it's not. It doesn't. If you go through if you've got a 2-year-old Camps Australia book, for example, and you're planning a trip and you're looking for somewhere to go and you call up and make a booking and it's closed, just put a marker through it, Sharpie through it in your book. Still good book. Yeah,
so you don't need a new one each year. It's you
not
buy
necessarily.
Once, it's relevant for a number of years. You might want to update it at some stage in the future.
Another resource I really love and use a lot is national parks websites.
Yep.
So I'm obviously not hugely familiar with other states and how they work, but in South Australia, there's like a main national parks website. And then obviously from there, it has a list of all the parks, recreation parks or national parks or conservation parks managed by Parks SA.
Yep.
And each of those will let you know if there's camping and then you get, PDF maps of the campsite and booking online and things like that. And I always find them pretty cool.
Yeah, we use this. I actually quite like the South Australian parks way of booking because it's just a price per site.
Yep.
WA, same sort of thing, different payment portals because you pay online and you get notifications in a different way. But the cost was slightly different. I think it was a cost per person per night. So it was a different way to work it out. I don't know. I found the simplicity of how South Australia have done it is really good. You buy this site, it fits. You pay for this site, which fits a car and a tent or whatever, and you can fit whatever people you want on there.
I really like their website as well. And I agree with that payment system because there are times where I've, say, booked a site for a weekend or two away and I've actually not ended up going, but I haven't been bothered to get a refund because last time I went with 3 families and we still just paid that one fee for that one site. So do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's cool.
But don't quote me on that WA one, but I know there was a difference between the way the prices were structured and the SA one. But in a nutshell, they all kind of do the same thing. And I know the SA one has a lot of photos of the campsite so you can pick it. Not always easy because it's just a photo from one angle. And I know I've booked a site before somewhere that was a tent site and I rocked up and you couldn't get a peg in the ground anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a uneven limestone shelf. So there was no way you could camp, not even a small tent. You could find somewhere to put pegs in.
Okay.
But you couldn't really tell that from the site, from the picture. So you're relying on the information that said I could camp in a tent.
I think sometimes that's part of the fun, if like you're going somewhere and you're still just discovering something, even though it's booked and you know where you're going, there's a discovery process about it.
Yeah. And I mean, that actually resulted in us going somewhere totally different. We got there and we said, this isn't going to work. Let's just cancel here and here and let's go up there. And we ended up going from like down near Port Lincoln to the Gawler Ranges National Park, like a whole day's drive away. And so glad I did it because we hadn't planned on going there otherwise and we'd already seen a lot of the Port Lincoln area.
That's cool.
This is in South Australia. So it's it is part of the adventure. But we had the flexibility and the time to do that on this trip.
I think the other good thing, or which we do as well, is if you are going somewhere as part of a national parks, rec park, conservation park, what have you, that have camping, often those sites will be sort of spread out or sprinkled across a large area. So often what we'll do is on the way out or on the way home, we'll just do a little detour past each of the sites. And if the ones that are vacant, we'll just, run on in, not drive in necessarily, but just, run on in and have a suss around and sort of keep notes, note lists on my phone of the different site numbers and what our perspectives of them are and things like that. So then the next time if we want to go to that same place, we've got like a quick reference from what we've been able to check out the time before and we can work out, should we try this one? And that's ways that you can do it, especially if you're going to a park, 6 hours away and the site you went to last time you loved and now you've gone to book it and it's booked out. Yeah. But there are other, I think.
It's probably a good discipline because you don't remember. You're probably not going to be back at that campsite if you travel for 6 hours. You might not be back there for a year or 2 years or whatever. And by the time you think about it again, you think, which one were we in last time? Was it this one and what did the other ones look like? But a few quick notes makes it easier to remember.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Or if I think I've got a notebook in the car and I've sort of started being able to make notes about things when we travel as well.
Very disciplined of you. I think I'd do it and then wish I'd done it later.
Yeah. I think it's not so much discipline, but that I'm like so anal and OCD about my campsites and what does and doesn't feel good that like I just need to make sure.
Well, it can make a difference to your camp, right? If you get a site that's sort of wedged up against the toilets or right against someone else or it's just tighter than you'd hope and you don't get the view, then it makes a bit of a difference. But if it meets your expectations in your mind to a degree, then it makes it feel nice
like I'll even note general size, like good for group camping or something, because if I'm talking to a friend and I'm like, oh man, like we love going to this place, want to come with us and whatever, then I will know which sites that we can book with an expectation that we're going together. So I think even though you're going to the same place. So
yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
Now these other, have you used any of?
I have previously, because I now use something else, which we'll talk about in a little bit later. But
so you've listed like UCamp.
Now, Find a Camp is just a generic online database of being able to find a camp based on your location or your postcode or thing. But UCamp, I'm pretty sure from the times that I used to use UCamp, is where people who own land, private land, put their properties up as places where people can come and go and camp.
Right.
So we went to a place down near Robe. It was years ago now, but it was like literally beach camping, but not on the sand. It was up on the grass and whatever in this field right above the beach, but it was somebody's farm. And so they'd just allocated that area to be able to go camping in.
Yeah, okay.
And so there wasn't any amenities or facilities, and you have to be really aware of that and really respectful of people's properties and things like that. But it's it's a good resource for sort of out of the way camping.
So we see a bit of that in similar to station stays.
Yeah. Station stays is specifically South Australia though. Okay.
But there might be similar thing. Maybe you camp similar, but it is really good. I've actually stayed. The station stays are really good. Like not the website, but staying on a station. It's just farms that have decided we've got all this space and we'll dedicate a bit of time to allocating dedicated camping spots. We'll put in some basic facilities. It's not always overdone. I know the one I stayed in and really enjoyed up near the Flinders Ranges here in South Australia just had very basic long drop and a space to set up camp. We pulled up and you could buy timber from them, like really good red gum timber, and they just bring this massive ute load of timber down for not much.
Yeah.
And you could have a fire near a creek bed, and it was a really affordable way to stay there, a bit more bush camping style. So I actually didn't know there was a website for that. So
station stays. Cool. Yep. And I think from memory, that's an initiative from the Flinders Council.
Right.
From memory.
Okay.
So there is Outback Beds is one that is similar to station stays, but that's for Queensland and New South Wales.
Okay.
And it's the same sort of thing. It's farm stays or bush camping on stations and big farms and things like that.
Yep.
And then there's also Station Hoppers, which is a generic database website which sort of covers similar things, staying on people's stations, but also really remote campsites and campgrounds and things like that.
Okay. I hadn't heard of most of these. I'll let everyone know at the end what I used on my big half lap that I did, but I didn't know there were all of these sites available, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I used apps more so, which is what we've noted next.
Yeah.
The most notable one being Wiki Camps.
Wiki Camps for sure, and I do use Wiki Camps, I'm not going to lie. One of the things that I really like about Wiki Camps is that it is community-based and that you can submit a campsite and things like that if you've found somewhere and you want to submit that. The other good thing is that especially if you're using it for free or low-cost camping, it gives you like active reviews from people publicly, and generally a lot of the people who use Wiki Camps are really good and they do provide that feedback. So if you're looking to go for a trip, you can check out the reviews and someone who's been a month before, especially if you're going somewhere remote. You might not get like real regular reviews, but people might go a month before and be like, look, there were so many European wasps here, like, or whatever. And then you're like, oh, maybe I might not go there because it's still summer. Or, do you know what I mean? Like, it's good because you can have active, up-to-date sort of feedback and information on those sites.
There's photos and things too on there, so you can look at people's photos, not what the campsite owner has submitted, but what users have submitted for their setup there, so you can get an idea of space and how you can set it up.
You know, people will provide feedback of access. If, you know, the campsite says that it has access for caravans and four-wheel drives, or, you know, to someone with a two-wheel drive can be like, yeah, I actually got in here with two-wheel drive on this day and it was fine. Or someone will be like, it says big rigs, but I can't fit my big rig in. It was a real hassle. So it gives you that real life feedback.
User feedback.
There is a cost for it though. I'm pretty
it's
sure.
Cheap as you pay once, like $8
I think I paid
$12
$8 or something like that,
and that's a lifetime. I think. It's just a one-off fee.
And
you get an awful lot for that $8.
You do.
You can filter if you just want free camp. You just filter by free camp. Or
you can,
if you need toilet facilities, free camp with toilet facilities, or you know,
I mean, with parks, I mentioned before, the downside of national park camping is often, not necessarily always, but often you can't bring your dogs. And so dogs is a filter in Wiki Camps. So you can filter dogs. You can filter for local local dump points. You can and it shows you land. Anyway, Wiki Camps, it's worth it.
The national parks things are on Wiki Camps.
They are on Wiki Camps, 100%.
You go to the park and then to book, you then go to the you go to Wiki Camps. You can look at the national park on Wiki Camps and then click through to book on the national park site. So
because the links are in there often, and
does national park? Do many of them have reviews? I can't recall. I don't think they do actually.
I don't really think they do.
User-based reviews, so you can get reviews on Wiki Camps or
correct
for the site, but you still book through. As with all the sites, you book through the sites.
Yes.
The campsites website or
but
portal.
It's not necessarily a navigational app in that sense. Like you can have a look on the map and you can sort of zoom in and whatever, but you wouldn't necessarily rely on that app for navigation purposes like you would, for example, with I think the Camps Australia app, which comes for free if you buy the book.
Yep.
Might be worth adding, but that's a subscription-based app. And then HEMA do a couple of apps. They do their HEMA app and they do a Camper X app. And that's really expensive, but I think that's like, I haven't personally used it because of the cost, but for all intents and purposes and everything I've sort of researched around that app, it's a super, super, super high quality app, super high resolution maps, navigation, all that sort of stuff. So I think there is value in that. But with the Wiki Camps one, I can potentially roughly, you can do a trip and you can book in multiple different camps on your trip and the days you want to get there and whatever, and it will give you like a rough trip plan. Yep. But it's nothing overly fancy. But yeah, the HEMA Maps one is real fancy.
I guess if you're doing it all the time and if you're doing more really off the main sort of drag sort of camping, then it's probably beneficial to have something with a bit more map capability.
Yeah, the maps are really good.
Because I use the Wiki Camps one a fair bit to find free camps just off of highways, and it's fine for that, but wouldn't want to go too far off the beaten track. And there's many times where I've tried to find the campsite based on where the little pins dropped, but it's not quite right. It's close, or it keeps moving. Your location on the map keeps moving around. So it's not quite as refined, but more than suitable for basic road trips.
The only other thing probably with Wiki Camps, because I know we've talked a lot about Wiki Camps, but I think we're talking about Wiki Camps because you and I both have lots of experience with that app. So the only thing worth noting with Wiki Camps for me personally is I've been at a couple of sites because Wiki Camps are like, yeah, this is a campsite. And then you find out it's actually not, like you can't legally camp there. And then, I have had a conversation with locals before going, beeping Wiki Camps with someone putting this on here and it's not a campsite and we have trouble with the council. So just potentially be mindful of that.
I have seen that a bit. If there's not many comments or photos or anything like that, don't just trust a pin on the map to be a campsite. And if you pull up somewhere and you think this doesn't look like a campsite, it probably isn't. But if it's one that's got plenty of reviews, and often people will have mentioned it's actually not a campsite in the reviews, that's a benefit of Wiki Camps.
That's where the reviews are good. Just
trust that. But yeah, it is an open platform for anyone to say there's a campsite here. So it just means if someone illegally camps somewhere overnight, they can post it as a campsite. Doesn't mean you should camp there though, so something to be aware of. But the likes of HEMA and Camps Australia wide, I don't think you can. They're actually listed by the company themselves, so it's not user generated. There's another one called Campermate that I tried to use, but I didn't really get much into it. It seems to be maybe a bit more New Zealand based, I think. I don't know much more about it. And there was another one, I can't recall the name, that I looked at just out of interest, but kind of like a Wiki Camps thing, but Wiki Camps has kind of got the market there, I think.
Definitely.
And just we have talked about it a bit, but when you pay $8, you get a lot for that $8. It's not $8 a month, it's $8, and you get the app. Yeah, and that's it. You can
also probably worth mentioning, which I'm sure you guys are aware, but we have no affiliation with Wiki Camps at all.
No,
at all,
not at all.
It's just we like the app.
I just want to mention council sites too. A lot of councils run their own. I know in South Australia they do their own sort of campsites around their sort of local area. Sometimes you need to look them up on the council websites. But quite often they'll appear on the likes of Wiki Camps and probably Camps Australia as well. But they're usually a more maintained campsite. Sometimes they're nice. Sometimes they're more of a convenience. And community caravan parks as well, just run by a local community. All of those things can be a bit of a gem to find. Yeah, for sure. But some of them also just have a bit of a look at reviews and pictures. Quite often they're set up as a convenience. So a town might say, we've got a local caravan park where you can pull up. not the sort of place you go to stay for a
Not where you
holiday
go
for
for a
week.
holiday. Yeah.
It's a bit of a road trip sort of scenario. You can pull up, stay there for a night, enjoy the town, go out and have, go to the bakery and do all those things around
Just
town.
like a layover spot.
That's right, yeah. So just be wary of that, I suppose, when you're booking. Don't roll up at a small local run caravan park at a small town somewhere and expect it to be a resort.
Yeah.
It's probably a paddock with toilet facilities that allows people to camp overnight.
Yes, definitely. So social media is excellent for finding new campsites, I find.
Enlighten me on this one. I'm not a big social media person.
So you can a little bit through Instagram if you're on Instagram.
I say that,
if
but
you
then
follow
Facebook
sort
group,
of local or state tourism bodies, often they'll throw up really great places to go, or at the very least really cool things to do or attractions, and a lot of the time they're regional, and which means that you can potentially be like, I'd really like to go there, and then start looking for somewhere to camp based on that place that you'd like to go.
Mm-hmm.
So they can have good inspiration there. Facebook groups are amazing.
I'm actually in a few Facebook groups.
Where, I mean, to be honest, I'm in a few of them, but I haven't really had many hot tips, or I haven't found places to go necessarily through there because I haven't needed to. But especially if you're someone just getting into camping, or you want to be going somewhere outside of your area or region or try something new, they're amazing. And if you just type in, for example, free camping, then you will see a list of a huge amount of, or Free Camp Australia or whatever. There's at least 7 or 8 groups, and all of them would have a minimum of 30,000 people in them.
Yeah.
Like, so there's one group, Free Camps Australia or something like that. It's got 130,000 people in it.
Yep.
So they're massive, and you can go in there and just use, your little search function in the group and type in the word of where you want to go, or an area, or beach camping or something like that. And it will bring up every single post where someone has discussed what you want to do. So you don't even necessarily have to interact in the group by posting and commenting or anything like that. And when push comes to shove, you can just put a post up and say, look, I want to go in this area and this is my budget, or I've got a dog. Anybody got hot tips? And you'll get them.
Yeah, because everyone's in there for the same reason, to enjoy camping.
That's exactly right.
I don't know. I'm part of some of those groups as well, and I see that a lot where people just say, want to head here this time of year. Is it busy? What's it like? And you get quite a few comments, just enough for you to make an informed decision on where you're going to go and whether it's actually worth it. And even to the point of like, don't book here, check up just down the road.
Definitely.
That's probably going to be better for you. So,
and there's, I find as well, they're often really great places for sort of social responsibility around camping to be discussed as well. Like, often people will ask questions about, fire ban season or campfires, or, or people will post photos and be like, hey, this is the campsite that I'm at this weekend. Look at all the rubbish here. If you're someone who uses this campsite, please take an extra bag. Be aware. So there's a lot of stuff like that going around. Or people say, I've been at this spot recently and it's at threat of closing. And I guess, having said that, recently there's been a bit of a spotlight on, now don't laugh at me, by the way, because someone out there is probably going to laugh because I don't know how to pronounce it exactly, but Palubi Beach. Because
that's right on the beach, that campsite.
Right on the beach. Like, that's actual beach camping, and there's little shelters there and what have you.
Windy as anything.
But also incredibly beautiful, especially at the right time of year.
We're talking South Australia.
South Australia here, sorry.
Interstate listeners, it's South Australia again.
But so, as an example, that particular area of camping where anybody can go to, you're not supposed to camp within 50 metres of those shelters. Like, that's just the council rule, or the rule for that area, because of those types of shelters. And camping within, for whatever reason, you're not supposed to camp there. Also, that's probably a really beautiful, lovely spot for the locals of that area who do take responsibility for maintaining the shelters, caring for that campsite and what have you. When they have a long weekend or time off, that's where they like to go.
Yeah.
And then when you rock up there and it is literally packed from end to end on the beach, basically, with people parked right up to those shelters and less than a metre between caravans and things like that, it can be really disappointing.
Yeah.
So I think something realistically for that particular campsite, I think there's a lot of talk at the moment of that being shut down and no longer being able to use for camping, and not necessarily for rubbish or things like that, but because people haven't been able to use common sense when they've rocked up to somewhere to decide whether or not it's right for them to camp there, because whether or not there are loads of people there already, or it's too crowded, or, you know, not being aware of the local rules and all that sort of jazz.
I had a similar campsite that is listed as a campsite, but if you rocked up there, there's no way you'd be able to camp because people seem to be set up there permanently. There's no space. I could barely turn my car around. It was so tight. But it's like a little community. It's almost like there's a town set up there, yet I believe it's a council-based campsite. I won't say where it is because I think it's a bit of a controversial thing. But that was on Wiki Camps. There's a campsite there. It looks like a great spot. And we went, there's no way we're going to camp. I don't even know if we're going to be able to get out. I have to back the car back out because there's nowhere to turn around. But people look like they'd been set up there for years.
Yeah, right. Okay.
In this campsite.
So I think if you're looking for, you know, for example, with that Palubi Beach.
I'm assuming that's how I've always said it anyway.
Yeah. I was like Perlubby. I always say Pearl-lubby, even though it's not Pearl, it's Per. But anyway, you know, if you're thinking I'd really love to go there, then use Google to research it. Go on those Facebook camping shows, ask questions about good times to go, find out about your campsite. You know, don't just necessarily think, oh, there's a pin there, I can go there and essentially do what I want. Make sure you're getting to know what your campsite is, what you're in for, what you're expecting, and potentially have another one or two options, especially if you're talking free or low-cost camping where you can't book, and you can be sure that everybody wants free or low-cost camping, right?
Yep.
Have a one or two extra options so that if you do rock up, even if you possibly could jam yourself in there, you know that maybe it's not the right thing to do. So you've got this one or two backup option, and you can still do day trips to that place or things like that. So, I think all of the resources that we've discussed are excellent to be able to start discovering new places where you can go and find your own sort of old favourites.
So my process when we travelled was pretty much I use Wiki Camps. I thought that was a priceless thing, and that'd be a starting point for me to look at the map and go, I'd zoom in on roughly where I want to get to that day for a road trip, and you could just click on them quickly and get a basic outline of like, oh, this sounds good, that sounds good. Okay, there's 3 or 4 in that area that sound good to me, and then read a little bit further. See if you can book it. You can probably eliminate 1 or 2 because they're already booked out potentially, and then you've got a few left. If you can find one that sounds really good, book it while you see it. If you know you're going to get there today, just book it then and there so you know it's locked away. And then I prefer to do that because then I can spend the rest of the day just thinking I've got a site booked.
Yeah.
I don't need to worry about time spent on anything other than setting up my camp at the end of the day because I know I've got a spot. If I haven't got that, then I end up spending half an hour driving around going, should we stay here? Should we go there? Oh, that one's full. And you waste time at the end of the day and it's always on your mind. So that's the process I use in finding a camp. So it's pretty much all Wiki Camp based. But if I'm planning from home, I'd still use Wiki Camps, look at where I want to go, look at all the options, maybe then go to Facebook groups, research what everyone's doing or what people who've been there before and their thoughts on it.
Yeah.
And based on how long I'm going to stay there as well. If it's a week-long campsite, then I'm looking for more than just like the town-based caravan park. I'm looking for a location that is nice to stay at, maybe near a beach or a lake or walking tracks or something like that so we can do stuff every day and minimize it down that way. But I find the map a really good place to start on Wiki Camps because you can say that's where I want to go. There is a campsite there, but it's full. But I have also got all of these options around it. And the one last thing I want to mention is to consider what you're taking with you because a lot of camps I've found will say, and I found Hip Camp to be very much like this, that you need to be totally self-sufficient. And self-sufficient nowadays means you carry everything, not just your rubbish, but all of your toileting business.
Yep.
Like you leave literally nothing but maybe the bit of water that, or even food scraps from water, you should try and carry all of that out. So you literally drain some water on the ground. You've left some footprints and some tire marks, and that's all. They want you to be completely self-sufficient now. So have a look if there's any restrictions around that. And a lot of station stays and property stays are now asking that you turn up with a portable toilet or some way to carry all your waste out, probably because it's getting so busy and they don't want to have.
And I have heard of that
everywhere.
actually being checked. Like when you go to check in, you have to actually show them that you have your self-contained toilet before they'll actually allow you to continue, which I think, happens because people see that you need to be self-contained but go without being self-contained because I think, get away with it. But
yeah, I've always been happy with digging a hole, but I can understand the move to a portable toilet now. And I think for family getaways on a weekend, it's probably a worthwhile investment to have that because it opens up a lot of extra sites outside of national parks and things that you can stay at.
Definitely.
Stay at properties.
Now, just I know this isn't how to find a campsite necessarily, but there were a couple of apps that I like to use when I'm planning or trying to look at where I'm going to go camping. And one of those is Mad Paws, which is essentially like doggy daycare or pet sitting.
Right.
It's sort of like a little what do you call it? Like a community. So if you're someone who's happy to look after someone's dog for a day, you can put yourself up on this website and be like, I'm such and such and I live here. And often you will find someone, particularly if you want to go into a national park and you want to do a day trip or you want to go in there and stay for a night or two, but you've got your dog, you can find someone local to that national park who's happy to have your dog.
That's pretty cool.
And I just want to do a shout out right now to Bernie at Mount Dutton Bay on the Eyre Peninsula, who is the greatest dog sitter of all time, has an amazing property, and her husband, whose name escapes me, I'm sorry, literally care for your dogs so beautifully. And she was saying that she has some people who live in Perth who drive all the way over to the Eyre Peninsula and leave their dog with her because they love how much she cares for them. And
that's cool.
She lives on this huge property, and 100%, if you're on the Eyre Peninsula region and you need to have your dog sat for a bit, go and see Bernie.
Mad Paws. So that's an app.
Mad Paws is an app and a website as well if you're not someone who likes an app.
Nice.
But and All Trails is another one that I've only sort of started using recently. But it's sort of a little bit like Wiki Camps in terms of it's sort of community driven and community resources, but it's to do with walking trails and hikes that you can take and things like that, but it's national. And so it might not be necessarily a specific sign-posted loop or something in national parks, but it could be a combination of different loops that someone's walked at and they really like and things like that. So if you're wanting to go somewhere, say a station stay, and you're like, is there really anything to do? You can have a look and see if there's any walks or so I don't know. I find that quite interesting.
And Petrol style fuel map you put in there, obviously just listing where cheap fuel is.
Especially this day and age, or at the time of recording anyway, when
Petrol's
you're paying
expensive.
over $2 for a litre of petrol. Yeah. Sometimes that can be really good in trip planning to get a gauge of petrol prices and things in the regions you want to go in.
I take a step back here to Wiki Camps again. Wiki Camps has got where you pick up petrol along the way as well. It doesn't have prices, but in terms of planning, you can have a look and think we can get fuel on the way
petrol
to there, then
stuff.
fuel afterwards as well. So
cool.
Wiki Camps has got that, and I think you can also filter by like dog friendly campsites. So if you can't find someone in Mad Paws, your next step is to go to Wiki Camps and filter by dog friendly campsites. So, we'll make sure we put a link to all these apps in the show notes.
Do you have any other apps that you use? Like they're the ones that I sort of stick to, but do you have any others?
I try and keep it pretty simple. I do use Avenza Maps, which is a little bit different than what we're talking about here, but it just overlays where you are with the map of an area, and national parks often have free downloads.
Yeah, I've seen those before. Anyway.
So you can download the map of the national park site.
Admittedly, I've downloaded so many of those and been like, why aren't they working? Because I didn't realise I needed it.
Oh.
So I've got this random map file that I'm like, can't open and trying to be like, what?
Well, it means you can open the map, and then the map uses geolocation to put you on that map. So we've done a few bush bashing walks with the kids. They'll get a bit freaked out. Go, we don't know where we are. I'm going, yes, I know where we are.
Thank you, Avenza,
we'll just keep going that way.
There's
a few extra hills than I thought between us and the campsite, but we made it.
That's cool.
So but I try and keep it pretty simple. If anything, I try to put the phone down, but
A bit
but
of
the
yawn
Wiki
there.
Camps was too handy to get all that information at
Agreed.
once.
Wiki, yeah. And Wiki Camps I only finally committed to from a friend who was like, commit to Wiki Camps.
Yeah. Yep. And you just get used to it. Get used to the interface.
You do.
And it makes planning it so much easier. So
yeah.
But interested to hear anyone else's process. I think I was pretty vague on mine, which is pretty much just look at the Wiki Camps map and start clicking around and then book one if you find it. But I think that interactive map is a good place to start, and probably the books are a good place there too, because you can sort of pinpoint where you want to go to, and you've got a radius of campsites that you can go to from there.
Yeah, definitely.
But pretty keen to hear if other people have got apps that they use or their process for booking their trips. So.
Yeah, and also, that station stays kind of resource for any of the other states, like Western Australia and Northern Territory.
Yeah.
If anybody knows about that, give us a shout out.
We found one, but we'll put other links in.
Yeah. But anyway, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching.
Catch you later.
See you guys.